right, guys, we're back for another season, season 2. We have Starr, Aaron, and myself. Tonight we're doing Ben Franklin and all the bodies that were found underneath his basement. You might have to correct me. It's like a hidden basement when they renovated. So we'll get started with like his history and where he was born, all that kind of stuff, and work our way up to the dead bodies and why we think they're there, and go from there. Aaron, why don't you start us off? You have, I think, the wealth of the info there.
Well, I don't think we should go through all of Ben Franklin's history.
Well, no, that'd be too much. Just the basics.
Let's start when he resided in London, where these bodies were found. So let's talk about the London time of Ben Franklin. So Ben Franklin was in London from 1757 to 1775. Now, this is just before the American Revolution in 1776, where he returned back to the U.S. To participate in the creation of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, to assist in the American independence. But he resided in this elegant 4-story home, and he at 36 Craven Street in London. And Ben Franklin
Let me stop you right there. You got to know that it's got to have a. Am I echoing?
No.
Yeah. Oh, just on my end you are, but maybe it's just my end.
Okay. With a name like Craven Street, you got to think about the horror of West Craven. You know, to me, that's a link right there.
Yeah.
Freddy Krueger's the reason those bodies were there.
Was Freddy Krueger all along.
That's the first thing that came in my mind when he said Craven Street.
Yeah, and thank God it was South Craven and not West Craven. I'm kidding. No, but he had a beautifully elegant 4-story home that was number 36 Craven Street in London. He had many parties and frequented a lot of social gatherings in the London High Life.
What kind of social gatherings might these be?
Well, some of them cost money.
Well, let's just put it this way: he liked the women.
He was, he enjoyed them ladies.
Yeah.
I wonder if some of them ladies became his victims.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. If we're gonna jump ahead just a little bit. If we're talking about the womanizer part of Ben Franklin, then yeah, maybe. I mean, he was quite a womanizer. He was a gentleman's gentleman who believed in the gentleman lifestyle.
Right.
Women had a place, and that's where they belonged. But he had many friends, many famous friends. The father of hematology, William Howen. What was his name? William
Hewson.
William Hewson. William Hewson. William Hewson is the father of hematology. If you don't know what hematology is the study of the blood.
Did you hear about Hewson, like, showing how blood runs through a turtle? Like, well, I guess he demonstrated.
I mean, that's where, like, so William Hewson, if you know anything about medical history and you know about these founding fathers of medical history, so William Hewson was, like, fascinated by the body as a whole, but he was even more fascinated by the blood. And at this time in the late 18th century, autopsies were not happening. You could not cut up a body at death because.
But I have to say, if you were a convicted felon, or like you were, what was it, executed, like you were found guilty and executed, you could take those bodies. Those were legal at that time.
Right. Well, you could sell those bodies and you could purchase them.
You could cut them up, but it was just limited.
Right, but you could purchase them, but there wasn't a whole lot.
Yeah.
So these individuals, these scientists, these medical forefathers, if you will, they would black market purchase bodies or steal bodies. And William Hewson was one of these guys who tested on animals and then later on started, stealing bodies out of the local morgues and and funeral homes. But
Yeah.
he was morbid. He would inject mercury into turtles and
Yeah.
just to watch the reaction.
I've heard that and read that.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty
Yeah.
brutal and painful. But did you read? So obviously, I don't know. Everybody may know. I don't know that the reason they found the bodies because they were renovating and then found the bones. They said 6 kids too. There was I've heard different numbers. I heard 10 total bodies, 6 being kids. So,
well, there was actually 15 total bodies according to the Smithsonian.
Yeah,
there were
that's
15
what I was
total bodies with a total of 1,200 bones. And the
yeah, I did hear 1,200.
Yeah, the breakdown was, I mean, more of a dozen, and they believe that there were the remains of 6 full children. There was enough bones to create 6 full children, but and then the bones were dated, and they were dated to the late 1800s or the late 18th century, the 1770s, 1790s. So I mean, it's still within the era of when Ben Franklin was alive, and truly when William Hawson was alive, and William Hawson and Ben Franklin were very close. So I mean, there's so much rigmarole. So in my research, I went through to the Smithsonian, and then I went through some history organizations, and there's so much contradiction because no one really knows, right?
Yeah.
It's all hearsay and theory. It's not really anything like that. But there was an organization called, let me see, it was called Friends of Benjamin Franklin. They found evidence that he allowed Hewson to use his home for his secret, autopsies and experiments on the bodies. And it could venture to say that he did it in the basement and hid the bodies in the secret room.
Could be, because according to what I could see, it was a windowless room. It was a secret room, like you said. And, at that particular time, they had to do stuff like hide and do all of these things because it was highly illegal. It was frowned upon by the church. It was, anything to do with dead bodies. It was sacrilege. And so, yeah, that makes sense but here's my question, Aaron. In your studies, did you come across, did Ben Franklin have this house built, or was it already there when
No. Yeah, he had 2 slaves that primarily built it. There were
right. So he commissioned the home to be built, so that he had a place in London. He also had his home in Boston, to include a home in France, in Paris. But yeah, he had the home. He commissioned the home to be built, and like Lisa said, it was built by 2 of his slaves.
Right. And see, and I think that that's important to bring out because, some people may be questioning, okay, well, couldn't those bodies have been there before Ben Franklin had it? But if they built the house, if he built that house, then, he takes responsibility for what's down in that secret room.
Right.
He obviously,
it's no secret that Benjamin Franklin was just as interested in anatomy and the way the body works as William Hewson. I mean, I wouldn't go as far as to say as it would be too far-fetched to assume that Benjamin Franklin maybe himself conducted experiments. I mean, you could purchase you could bribe the gravedigger to slip you a body and just bury an empty box.
Yeah.
I mean, it was not uncommon for graves to go missing.
Well, back during this time, there was so much slavery. He owned slaves. He sold slaves in his own store. How do you know some of those weren't slaves as well?
Right.
Yeah. And I could even see with Benjamin Franklin's curiosity, because he was a curious man. That's why he studied as much as he did, and he got into as much as he did. I can see him sneaking downstairs and watching Hewson do his stuff, maybe even helping him out, but going down there to see, what's going on and watch him.
Yeah, that's definitely plausible, and I agree completely with that.
So do you think it's haunted?
I don't know. Let's go investigate. I could do a trip to London.
Hey, anybody over in London, have us come over.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind a trip.
I sent Aaron something about visiting Annabelle today, and he said no.
No,
Nope, I'm not okay with that.
I
don't like that.
Annabelle.
He's
no.
like, no. Did y'all see the second movie? It's off topic, but did y'all see the second one's coming out? Annabelle Returns Home, or
something like that? Yeah.
Is that the second one, or is that the third one?
It may be technically the third.
I can't remember, but I did see the trailer for it, and it looks pretty spooky, actually.
Yeah, we've enjoyed those. Kearney's actually enjoyed those, so.
Yeah, I might have to watch that one. I do get into the Ed and Lorraine Warren movies, and they're interesting to me.
Yeah,
I know a lot of it is fiction that they've added into it to make it more
dramatic,
exciting, and sellable, but it's still fun.
Yeah. So going back to that basement, like y'all said, obviously that he had it built, and it
wasn't big.
Yeah, and he didn't even live there right away.
You could not fit in there. It was
where the bodies were.
1 meter.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a little over 3 feet by 3 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a dumping hole.
Yeah.
It was a room to literally leave things to hide the evidence.
That's terrible.
I wonder, since it was so small of a room, I was thinking about this, and this is getting really morbid here, but I wonder, did they burn them did they cook them to get all the meat off of the bones and then put the bones in there? Because, it would have caused a stench and a half.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, not necessarily, because you have to remember this is during the 1770s. So refrigeration was not it was not a thing. Ice boxes had not yet been created.
Right.
So you had root cellars and cold houses that pretty much stored everything, and larders and whatnot. So it was not uncommon to smell rotting meat. It was not something, I mean, you have to remember, those times were disgusting. They stank.
Yeah, that's true.
The people smelled bad. The homes smelled bad. They threw straw on the floor to collect the whatever fluids came out. And outhouses were a far and few between. You just go in a pot and then throw it out in the street.
Now, did they have
the cleanest of times? So to honestly say, oh, it smells like burning bodies. I mean, we're not talking about a Sweeney Todd thing here, where some lady's going, smell it, kind of the devil.
That, it's just my curiosity there. I'm thinking, okay, it's just it's just a little bitty hole that they got these bodies in. So I'm thinking, okay.
Well, how would they even fit all those bodies down there?
That's what I'm thinking. How would they fit all of them in there?
But we're talking about
over a long
meter.
Period.
So how big is a meter? It's about, what, 3.5 feet?
Yeah, 3.5.
Yeah, I'm terrible at math. Yeah. I apologize. I'm probably the worst with math out of all of us. But so we're talking about 3.5 feet by 3.5 feet. And this is 15 people. So if you are cutting things down, obviously they're not throwing them in a hole on top of each other. But if you're cutting it down and you're throwing limbs and pieces of torso inside a hole, I guarantee you they didn't even fill it.
Yeah. Well, and they can get in there and stomp, jump up and down on it and squish it down.
That's gross.
I'm not sure about that one, but
no, she's definitely morbid over there. Now they did find saw marks on the bones, so they definitely cut them down.
Well, because the tools they had were they were very cruel, weren't they? They weren't clean cut. Think about it. At the time, we're talking about where use of tourniquets aren't even a thing yet. So if you're shot somewhere and they think it's too bad, they just cut your leg off. And there's no anesthesia. There's no kind of sanitation. Sanitizing equipment wasn't even a thing yet. So I mean, you're looking at saws, and you're looking at even in medical equipment, you're looking at saws. You're looking at serrated tooth utensils that are meant to cut and strip, as opposed to a soft blade that is going to leave a nice clean incision. Right? When you're removing parts, if you're cutting a leg off, you're going to use the equipment that the physicians had at the time, and that's basically a handsaw.
Yep.
Now, I've got a question for you guys. Back then, were they embalming bodies? Did they have that technology at that point?
I don't.
So actually, embalming has been around since Egypt. The techniques of embalming today are, with the use of formaldehyde, are still fairly new when you're talking about the last 200 years. But they did they did natural burials. You were buried in a pine box. If you were embalmed in some way, that's a ritualistic. If we're talking historical embalming, embalming wasn't actually popularized in America until after the death of Lincoln. And so you didn't really see it in the U.S. You didn't see it in a lot of places, especially in Western countries. It became very popular in the U.S. when Lincoln died, and that's because they embalmed him so that they could, transport him around the country and parade his body at town halls and say, "This is your hero," And so because of that, the embalming situation began to occur in the U.S. and it became more and more affluent, and that's why we embalm today. I mean, I'm not for embalming. I'm for natural burials. Embalming is you're dead. What do you care what you look like?
Just put me in a box and burn me up, and then I want each one of you to have a little vial of my ashes so that I can follow you everywhere.
For some reason, I am freezing up here.
Oh yeah, I was wondering what those little black patches were.
There you are, Aaron.
I know. I keep freezing. I don't know why.
So Star's over there getting ideas for her book.
But it just wasn't a popular thing. And if you were embalmed, you really, there was really a reason for it.
Well, was there a reason for them to get rid of the smell? Would they have embalmed the bodies to get rid of? Would they even think about it back then?
Formaldehyde wouldn't have decomposed the bodies. Formaldehyde would have sustained the bodies for some time. The best way, and you have to remember back then, if a person died, the funeral was done within days because the body began to mutilate, it began to rot, and rigor mortis would set in. And once rigor mortis is out, that's the end game, people. Smells start coming out of the body.
Yeah.
It starts to fart and burp, and it's releasing all these gases and methane and monoxide.
And it sits up by itself. You
right.
So somebody sitting with a body, and it just sits up by itself.
When the person died, from the time they died to get them in the ground was pretty fast. Which is why a lot of the times they were during that period, they were buried with bells. Because there were so many people they thought were dead that were not dead, and they were buried alive, and they'd be ringing the bells. That's why the term "saved by the bell" came from, is you would be buried alive if the person wasn't truly dead.
I thought that was just a TV show. Yeah.
Right.
Right. But if we're talking about decomposition, they really didn't have a lot of time, right? To really look into the bodies. They really didn't. And probably around that time, it would have been really easy to strip the flesh because of the decomposition process. And then, just like any other larder house or storehouse, you have smells coming from the building, and that, I mean, that was just a normality, especially in London in the late 1770s. People were throwing their sewage in the street.
Well, I was going to say, I've seen some documentaries where they had a kind of like a gutter running through the street that
Yeah,
would carry stuff away for them. They just pour it in that gutter and it would just run. Yeah, that's
Crazy.
yeah,
And
it was quite a time.
Yeah.
those slaves had to know about this going on too, because if he had up to 7 slaves and then 2 built the house, I mean, obviously they knew the room was there, and I'm sure they knew exactly what was going on.
Well,
they were
and
probably the ones that cleaned up and disposed of the parts. But you have to remember, at that time, slaves were property, right? And at no point in time would they bad talk their owner, because that would mean, a beating or death for them, which, I mean, is devastating in itself just to even think about that kind of a life. But I mean, and most slaves weren't even allowed to speak to anybody who would enter the home, if unless it was, the old term, speak unless spoken to. Or you're meant to be seen and not heard. Those are terms that come from that slavery lifestyle. That's how the upper class deemed the lower class. If you were, and it was not just the slaves, it was servants too. If you were in a great house, especially in the UK, if you were in a great house, you were meant to be seen and not heard. If you had to be seen, that's fine, but you weren't meant to be heard. You don't speak to anybody unless spoken to first. And then it's the same with the concept of you only speak when spoken to. You're an ornament, you're a wallflower, you're furniture, you don't do it, you carry a tray, that's what you do. So it wouldn't shock me if they were involved with either the disposal of the pieces of the parts that were dismembered, and they were the ones that actually put them in the hole. Because I don't know, at that time, I mean, even if you're breaking the law and you're going through the first amounts of autopsies, do you really want to clean up the mess?
Yeah.
You just wanted to do the fun part. That was cutting it up, right? And in their minds, that was the fun part. You don't want to have to clean it up. Then you'd send someone down to clean it up.
Right. Yeah.
So,
and I'm not going to take it anymore. You guys keep telling me, be seen and not heard, and I'm just not going to take it.
Sorry, you mentioned about a documentary or something you saw?
Yeah, I have seen documentaries where they have a curb, or they used to have a curb or a little trench in the street.
Yeah,
and that's
the gutter.
where they would go out and pour their fluids and sewage. But yeah, that's the documentaries I've seen. Just history.
And did y'all read up or see how he turned really anti-slavery? I don't know what year that was. Around 62 is when he became real anti-slavery and was stressing the importance of abolishing slavery. It's weird how he started out so, selling them in a store and all this, and then realized, hey, this is not right,
Yeah.
And he actually opened a school too, a school for education for them.
I think, I would like to think that Benjamin Franklin was not a cruel master, that he was not one that would just beat his property or kill him or do whatever, that has been done in the past. I would like to think that he did have an open mind. And he had to have had an open mind for some of the stuff that he was, involved in and doing, and especially if he was working with what's his name, Hewson?
Yeah, William Hewson.
Down in the basement. If he was allowing him to do that in his own home and he was part of it, he had to have had an open mind, because that was a very illegal thing back then.
Yeah, but I mean, it was still very progressive to even think about giving slavery freedom.
Oh
especially,
yeah.
I mean, to include in Great Britain, because what was it, July of 1866, 1833 is when they passed the, what was it called? Its actual name was the Negro Emancipation, I believe. It was the abolishment of slavery in Great Britain. And, and we're talking 60 years before, I mean, the progression of Ben Franklin having the ides of slavery being wrong, that's 60 years before it even got abolished in Great Britain.
Right. Yeah. I've always been fascinated by him. Benjamin Franklin was he was a man ahead of his time.
Well, he was definitely a Renaissance man, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy all the stuff he was involved in, from the inventions like the bifocals and everything to being the author and printer, and just scientists and physics that he was into. And he was so into electricity and just, I mean, like you said, just such a wide array. And then poetry, whenever he got into publishing and printing, he fell in love with that. And he's just an interesting man.
What were they called? The penny books? What were they called?
Penny what?
Oh, what were they called? I'm going to look this up. I have to look this up. Ben Franklin used to publish books like pamphlets.
Oh. And the lightning rod and the Franklin stove, and then of course being on the $100 bill.
Or Richard's Almanac.
Yes, or Richard's Almanac.
When did they start with the separation of Republican, Democrat? Where would he fall in line with kind of that?
Say that again.
When it comes to the parties, do they have that over in like London, Europe? I guess they wouldn't, would they? I mean, I know he traveled over here though, like because he was a politician. Would he kind of fall in line with the Republican side, the Democratic side?
I don't know.
Think probably more Democratic initially because of owning slaves, and then falling more right when he started, saying, "Hey, this isn't right." I was just thinking about that.
He was also a marijuana proponent and hemp.
Oh, what? Really? I didn't know that.
Along with Thomas Jefferson and George Washington and so on and so on. So yes, he was very progressive.
Well,
I didn't know.
I had to look this up because I'm not really sure. Political history is not my forte. So from
not mine
the 1680s to the 1850s of Great Britain, his political standing was called the Whigs.
I remember them.
WHIGS, the Whigs, and they were a faction of Parliament. And then there were the Tories, TORIES, and they were established in 1714 and went through 1716.
And does it list what their primary beliefs were, or so we know what he believed?
It's not really giving them standing. But you have to remember in the 18th century, especially in Great Britain, it really wasn't a party system. It was a class system. You were part of a class and you maintained that class. And the classist system really stayed true all the way up into the Edwardian period, into the late excuse me, into the late 19th century and into the earliest 20th century. So you had a very structured class system. You were either first class, second class, third class, and then you were within factions within those class. The third class were the poorest of the poor. Generally, your laborers, your housekeepers, your chimney sweeps, gutter cleaners, the lamp lighters, these low menial jobs. And then as you go into your second class, that's your working class. That's your lawyers and your doctors and your in Great Britain they were called solicitors. Those were your solicitors. They were also housekeepers, the housekeepers in great houses, the butlers of great houses, head maids, the cooks, the chauffeurs. I mean, if you had a good standing job that paid every week, then you were considered second class, especially if you could afford to live outside, especially if you work for a family, a great family, and you could live outside of the house, then you were considered middle class, that's second class. And then obviously your first class, which is your political class, that's who ran your government. Those are your rich people, your lords, your ladies, your uh, earls and countesses and dukes and the marquises and or marquis in Britain. And so, I mean, it was a very class system, and everything went by the class system. And you don't see a change in that until the late Edwardian period, when you start seeing labor unions popping up right after the war. So, yeah, it's not really a lot of political agenda for the people, but the Whigs, that kind of structure was based off of power within the nobility, of which way the noble power would move and how they could influence the royalty to move in their way. So, Benjamin Franklin, and you have to remember, he was not only he was considered American after the independence, right? Because he moved back in 75. The American independence, the revolution began in 76, and he stayed. Well, he went to France, but and then he became an honorary member of the French nation. He was a French citizen, if you will.
Lots of money there.
Yeah, he had Donald Trump money. Yeah, he was very wealthy. Yeah, if I could have Ben Franklin money today, I would probably be richer than Donald Trump. But yeah, it was a class system, so there wasn't really a political agenda, and everything was based off of faith. So everything was very religious. Everything was based off of religion, the laws, how things were practiced. You couldn't do autopsies because they believed that if you hurt the body in any way, you couldn't pass on. You didn't pass on as a whole person. So if someone cut off your leg to experiment on it and you went to the afterlife, you went with only one leg. So that was the opinion. So,
Well, and if you think about that, even up to Custer's, Custer in Montana, that's why the Sioux and the Native Americans, that's why that they cut them up and they gouged their eyes out, cut their tongues off, because they didn't want them to go into the afterlife as a whole person.
yeah.
So I mean, even that, but that thinking has been around for a very long time.
Starr. Starr always has that great stuff there. If it has to do with cutting up, stomping on dead bodies,
right?
Starr's got the info. She's got
right.
The
yeah, you need to know about that. Just ask me. I got you.
Yeah, Starr was Jack the Ripper in a past life.
I believe it. I believe it because it's just like I enjoy it. I can't help it.
That is hilarious. Oh, man. And I was shocked to find out he was one of 17 kids. I was like, good God, 17 children? How the hell? Does she have a bladder left? Like,
no, it fell out. It fell out.
So that's why she stopped having kids, is she lost her bladder after the 17th?
She prolapsed.
Fell out.
Good Lord.
Can't imagine. I mean, it wasn't uncommon for that time to have so many kids. I mean, you're at a time where medicine is not advanced, and you still have things like cholera and scarlet fever and smallpox, and these vaccines are still not out there, and you have a lot of kids just to make sure that your genes survive.
Well, I can understand like 5, 6 kids. I've seen that, but
but the 17? Flu would kill you back then. I mean, the flu will kill you now, but I mean, it was really a death sentence if you got the flu in the 1700s.
Well, I mean, even my grandparents, they had 14 kids.
Did they? Wow.
And not all of them survived. I mean, they had 2 sets of twins that died at a very young age from sickness, and of course these were hillbilly people up in the hills in Tennessee, and
And that's why they were all dying.
and they've got their own belief system on medicine and stuff,
Well,
and a little bit of the recipe here and there, and
well, that's why they were making all those babies. They didn't have nothing to do up there in the hills.
Right.
Well, once you got the corn set in the mash, it was not too much to do after that.
To make those babies, man.
Mm-hmm.
Kearney would have 17 in a heartbeat. I'm telling you.
Oh, I bet.
He asked for 5. I'm like, hell no.
No, not me. I'm done. I'm happy. I love the ones I've got. I don't want any more.
Aaron, I see your 3 babies behind you.
Oh, those are old. That's such an old. I mean, they were babies then. Now they're teenagers. This reminds me of the good times. This reminds me of the stress-free days.
When they were sweet and innocent.
Because now I have teenagers.
Yes, I know that feeling well, Aaron.
So
I'll say a prayer for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll light a candle.
Mine's out of the house, so I'm good. She's done moved out with the boyfriend, so.
Oh, you got a new one starting up.
I know. Starting over. Well, I do want to announce to everybody before we do leave tonight, too, that we'll be moving an hour forward. The next 2 shows will be starting at 6 and going from 6 to 7 Central Standard Time, 5 to 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. If I got that right. So just join us an hour earlier the next 2 weeks. And it looks like it's going to be every other week unless, something comes up. If y'all are good with keeping that. That's what we have scheduled anyways for the next couple shows.
That sounds good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've been wanting to get back into this, and I got to speak with our friend Shari, the one that lived in Sheridan, and now she's back in upstate New York. Anyway, she sent me about 3 stories of her interactions with some spirits. And I thought I would share those with you guys, and then maybe later on we can talk about it or whatever on one of the shows, if we have anybody that wants to hear it. And I forgot to let her know that we were going to be having a show tonight. So don't kill me, Sherry.
Or she'll come haunt you.
Oh, she'll come haunt me.
Well, we've got like 10, 15 minutes left. Do y'all have anything more? Or do you want to share that story at the end of the show? Share it now.
I haven't gone through them yet, so I cannot share yet.
Oh, okay. You haven't gone through them, and you've got 3.
I think
topic was it was a short topic, wasn't it? There's just not a lot. I mean, there is a lot of conspiracy behind the bodies in Ben Franklin's basement, but is it a Ted Bundy thing? Is it a
yeah? That's the problem. It's like,
is it a part of the Masons? Is it because he's a Mason? There's ritual there, but I don't think that's the case.
Yeah.
Well,
and
I
like
don't
I said, when Ben Franklin's friends, that organization, Friends of Ben Franklin, they found that there's more likelihood of it being William Houston who did the chopping and knopping on bodies and putting them in the hole than it was Ben.
And I totally agree with that. Like I said, he was such a curious fellow. I could see him going down there and, just watching and maybe getting his hands dirty a little bit, but I don't think it was his full
passion.
Yeah.
It almost reminds me of have you guys heard how years ago the dentist would put the teeth in the walls, and now when they renovate old dental offices they find teeth. That's how they dispose of them. Yeah,
I've never heard of that.
Thousands of teeth in the walls. Yeah, they would just poke a little hole and just shove the teeth in there and let them drop down. And during renovations, they've been finding over the years teeth in walls. Yeah.
Now, see, that gives me some ideas for some writing.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just really interesting. Kind of reminds me of the saying, you know, this is bodies, that's teeth. You know, you just needed some more disposal of his stuff and shove them in a hole. You know.
Yep. Well, tell me, Lisa. Getting completely off the subject here. Your doppelganger book. How's that going, and when will it be available? Bless you.
I don't know. It's good. So consents. It's a nightmare trying to get consents. Honestly, that's the biggest struggle. Starr, I need your consent. She's like guilty. But I've got no. I mean, there's like probably 17 participants that have sent me stories. I've got that all written up and everything. Included like, you know, history and old articles and all kinds of stuff in there, and even pet doppelgangers. And it's really turning out interesting, and just checking, you know, everybody's, you know, astrological signs, and are they right-handed, left-handed, all that kind of stuff, and tossing it in there. And it's just getting really, I want those consents on file before I start the illustration. And so I gave them a deadline and said, hey, I need it by this deadline so I can kind of progress. And I've got about 3 or 4 more people that are wanting to toss in stories.
If I say on here, you have my full consent, Lisa, will that work?
No.
Sure.
Well, what if I type it into the chat? You know,
just tell the publisher, go look on YouTube.
But and then so yeah, I just need to. I've got an illustrator lined up, a couple that I'm looking at, and so yeah, I've got some ideas of the front cover, and working on like the I guess they call it the dust cover for the front and back of that and stuff. So yeah, it's in progress, and hoping to progress with it. We'll see where it goes.
I'm excited to read it.
I kind of wanted like a Halloween kind of time frame for putting it out, and last year just did not happen because it takes time to find these cases. Like, it's not, you know, it's a rare topic. You know that, Aaron. You did the show on it. It's like hard to find people that have actually experienced it, and then to get that many people together and get their consents and get their stories, and then to find all the research behind it and toss that in there.
Right.
So it's just a time-consuming thing. So I'm hoping October of this year, but you know, I don't know. I just keep everybody up to date on it and say, hey, I'm working on it, and I'm trying not. I don't want to rush it either, because you don't want it full of fluff and rushed and not worth crap. So I just say when it happens, it happens. When as it progresses, it progresses. And
well, it's your baby, and you don't want to give birth to this baby too soon. So you know,
exactly.
Cook it in that oven a little bit longer. What
do y'all have going on, Starr? You're writing something.
I am writing a serial killer book, and hopefully it'll turn into a series, because I have all of these ideas going through my head, and I'll write them down, and if they don't fit in this one, I'll throw them in another one, you know.
That is just right up your alley.
It is. You know, I have studied serial killers since I was preteen.
No wonder you're all chopped and mangled.
I know it. And it's always been fascinating to me. I've always said I should have been a forensic psychologist, because I just love dealing with, I like studying and watching people and their I can't even think of what it's called right now, but their facial expressions and
micro expressions.
Yes, micro expressions, because I really got into that when I was working for the state in Wyoming, because, you know, of talking to people and reading body language and all this kind of stuff, and I just find it fascinating, and so I'm trying to incorporate even that into the book. So we'll see.
Now, I've heard that there was like based on astrological signs that like the serial killers, you know, they're primarily certain ones. Have you found any correlation with that? Have you looked into that for your book?
The correlation between what now? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Like them being a serial killer and their astrological sign.
No, I haven't found that I
The
do
majority are
know that some
Virgos.
of
Isn't
them
that
are
scary?
Scorpios and Virgos.
Yeah. So I could be a serial killer and you don't even know it.
That's true. You know,
Please
and
don't
that's
tell
the
us.
thing.
The
They
kind-hearted
fit
Virgo
into
out slaughtering hundreds of people at night.
they fit into society. So, you know, like Aaron does so good, and they're just so
Or
friendly
hiding in your
and out.
backyard. Well, Ted Bundy was a Boy Scout leader in a church,
Oh
Sunday school teacher. He was such a
yeah.
good guy. He
Oh,
was a
he
Virgo.
was.
He
He
was a
was.
Virgo.
I just couldn't get past his unibrow, but other than that, I thought he was a
That's
good-looking
true.
guy. Except for that, you know, every time I see it, I want to pluck it out for him.
But now I'm gonna have to go find a picture of him. I don't remember a unibrow, but I mean,
Well,
I
in
looked
some pictures
at
he's
him.
got it, and then some he doesn't. So I think some of those days he forgot to pluck or something.
He's just behind on his game. Give the guy a break.
Well, he
Yeah,
was tired. He was out all night. Painting
Right?
red.
and
He
talk
was
about
busy.
freaky. He's the one that liked he liked sex with the dead. He didn't that you know he
That's
didn't want them alive. He
necrophilia.
wanted to kill them and then have sex with them. So
He was a necrophiliac.
yes, he was. Yes, he was.
Do you know author Tim Miller, Starr? Well, I think
No.
didn't we no, maybe I interviewed him on Beyond the Veil before this
I don't
this
remember
show.
him.
He's an author out of San Antonio and does all that kind of like just like you're talking about killing people, having sex with dead bodies, like all that kind of. He sounds like he'd be right up your alley. Like I have to introduce you to.
Yeah, please do. I'd love to meet him. I always love meeting fellow serial people.
He goes to a lot of the horror conventions, but mostly around Texas. But he gets out and about some. So
Well,
interesting
maybe one
guy.
of these days.
Yeah, yeah. We could exchange ideas.
Exactly. I'm always looking. Of course, I've got so many ideas in my head. I feel like it's going to explode sometimes. You know, no wonder there's serial killers out there. They have all these ideas in their head and they got to get it out somehow. But I choose writing.
She's like your disclaimers. You need to carry around a little pad and pen so you can just jot down notes.
It's a coping mechanism.
I know.
It is a coping mechanism. It is. And if you ever see your name in my book or see a familiar situation, then you know I'm coping.
Hey, you know what he does, which is really interesting, and I don't know if other people can do it or if it's like considered stealing, you know, what he does, but he allows people to pay to put their name in his book, like
I've
to
heard
use
of
them
that.
as a character in his book. And I mean, you could use just their first name, their last name, too, you know, nickname, whatever. You know, I mean, you could. It's your book, but it's pretty interesting because one time I had thought about it, but his books are so grotesque that I'm just like, I want my name in the book, but not that bad. Like,
read your own name in a book and find out how you were skinned with toenail clippers and.
Yes, I can't do it. Like, no, not that type of book. So I'd probably pass on yours too, but. If it was
take a needle and start pushing it up under the fingernail and just go a little bit at a time.
Yeah, the less graphic book I would do, but I mean, some people love that stuff. So you got an opportunity to like make money on it too while you're getting the book going.
Well, I'm hoping to. You know, the thing is I'm doing it for fun. Yeah, I'd love to sell it and make some money off of it, but to me, it's a coping mechanism, like he said, and it's fun. You know, you know, I might even put our favoriteest place of all in there sometime, Yorktown, and write something about that. And who knows?
We definitely need to go back.
I know. I've been jonesing for that place for a while, and they have little events, but there's all these other people, and I'm just like, I don't want to be there with a bunch of other people.
No, I don't either. I want to go just us and do it right, do it good.
Yeah, I think I'm going to order a few things. I'll have to talk to you about it later. But there's some new equipment out, and I'm just like, I want more toys.
Yeah, I want one of those Connect, that you can
Yes.
see stick people in it, and I want to test those because you know me, I believe, but I'm also a skeptic, and so I want to test that thing out because
I don't
I
believe
watched-
those things are even.
Aaron, you can confirm with us. We'll use a Connect, and you can tell us if there's something there.
exactly.
I'll just be like, "There's nothing there," and then you'll be seeing this little stick man. I'm like,
So
"There's
lift your
nothing
hand
there."
and wave.
Do you remember at the hotel, that nasty hotel in San Ann, where it looked like somebody was murdered or a dog
Where
pissed
Starr
all over?
almost got us killed. Yes.
And you remember we were like using the equipment stuff, and I remember Aaron saying, "Why are y'all still talking? Like they're gone. Like they left already or something." we're still going at it. Like,
Oh, that's
damn,
right. Kara was with us. Yeah.
Like, can you not? You could have told us that earlier. Like, don't let us go on for a while.
Oh well.
That's funny.
That's his way of coping.
Watching us, letting us keep
Just
talking to
let this
nobody.
be your thing. Just let it happen.
You need to direct us, Aaron. Tell us where to go, where all the
I tried that
activity
in the
is.
past, and then you guys end up going the opposite direction.
We follow so well.
Right.
That's funny. Well, it's like we're up on our hour already. Wow.
All right.
I guess it's time to call it quits.
All right. Well, I've had fun, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the season, and then hopefully we'll be back in the fall.
Yeah. Do you remember what our topic is for the next show? I was going to look it up.
I do not.
Offhand? I can tell y'all in just a quick second here.
Aren't we just the best hosts? We don't even know what
I
we're
know.
going to be talking about.
I just do the research.
Oh, so the next one was the Bilderberg and the Deep State.
Oh, that's right.
Hopefully we can get enough to fill the hour. I think so, because it's two massive topics. And then
Did you say build a bear in the deep state?
Build-A-Bear.
Yes.
Come
Build-A-Bear, the company, has a political standing in the U.S., and they're trying to take over the world. One bear at a time.
There you go.
Bilderberg.
The Bilderberg.
Bilderberg.
And then that's April 29th. So it'll be 5 to 6 Mountain Standard, 6 to 7 Central. Same time also. Yes, April 29th. And then May 13th, same time. That one's, and I'm going to totally butcher it. Aaron, you might know how to pronounce it. Is it Carthaginians? I can't even say it. But it's a culture where they sacrifice children.
Okay.
Yeah, they conduct an infanticide.
Yeah.
Infanticide,
So
I apologize.
That'll be interesting. And then we need to post some more shows after that. To
Yes,
see
we do.
What Starr and Aaron come up with. Starr's gonna find something grotesque. Be like, no, Starr.
The bloodier the better.
Well, I guess we'll see you guys next week.
All
I'm
right.
gonna skip on over to Sheila's show. Sheila Gay has a show that's starting about now. If y'all feel like watching, or anybody out there. All right. See you next week, guys.
All right. See ya.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Have a good one.
Love y'all.